What's up, everybody? Welcome to the AllSooners Podcast. Wednesday, December 13th, episode 228. It's SEC Day in Oklahoma and Texas. More on that later. That's Ryan Chapman. He joins us for more. I'm John Hoover. I'm in Tulsa. Randall Sweet's going to jump in. Third segment, we're going to talk about recruiting, the portal, state championships. Lots to get to there with Randall. So let's dive in. Let's jump right into the top. Ryan, Danny Stutsman coming back. Billy Bowman coming back. And for a minute there, for just a minute, you felt like, wow, this Brent Venables culture is winning them over. This Brent Venables culture is establishing itself. And these guys want to skip the NFL and they want to come back. We'll talk about those dudes, Stutsman and Bowman, in just a minute. But then it flips. And you're like, wait a minute, Cayden Green is leaving? Shocking. I mean, you get this feeling that everything is going the right way, and then just like 2 days later, out of nowhere, Cayden Green bails. And it is radio silent, Ryan. It is one of the most shocking departures. Freshman All-American, freshman captain, started 5 games his true freshman year on the offensive line, which is almost impossible to do historically. He gets in there and he basically takes over. Ryan, against Texas, this is why fans are so pissed right now. Against Texas, he comes off the bench and is like a conquering hero, kind of in a much less dramatic way, like Caleb Williams was. Comes off the bench, turns the game around, inserts himself into the lineup, and you're thinking, oh my God, they are set at left guard for the next 3 or 4 years, right? And then Caleb Williams leaves, and now Cayden Green has left, and it's like, what? People are bent about this, and he has been radio silent. He hasn't talked to anybody.
Well, they're bent because he's good. I mean, no disrespect to anyone else that hit the portal, but like the Dylan Gabriel situation, very unique. Dylan Gabriel's the top player in the portal, but everyone knew exactly why that happened because Jackson Arnold, it's his time. Brent Venables talked last Thursday in his Alamo Bowl press conference about they had a couple of guys who had hit the portal that had a COVID year to use, but Oklahoma viewed them as seniors a year ago. I think those guys are Key Lawrence, Marcus Major, contributors, but Oklahoma needs them to move along so they can get their roster back to what it needs to be as far as you bring guys in, they're here for 4 years, 5 if they redshirt, they move out. Everyone else was like a guy that has just not contributed and wants to go play football somewhere else. Cayden Green was the anchor of the left side of Oklahoma's line heading into the SEC. You were going to slide Jake Sexton back over to left tackle. You're going to have Cayden Green play left guard. Those two guys absolutely mauled and kicked butt and took names. And Lawrence, the one time they got to play on the left side of the line together for a banged up Walter Rouse. And they were going to be the dudes. And now Jake Sexton, he walks in, he's looking around. He's looking like the John Travolta meme from
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, yeah, where he's looking at the offensive line room going, where are all the starters? Where I'm the lone returning starter, and even he had to supplant Tyler Guyton to be a returning starter. If you look at the group, if Guyton was quote unquote the guy, Oklahoma just lost their entire offensive line. Walter Rouse, McCain Matire, those guys have no eligibility left. Cayden Green's in the portal. Andrew Ames off to the draft. Tyler Guyton's off to the draft. So it's just Sexton, and it's a massive blow. That guy's going to be an All-American. If he plays like he played in 5 games this year, he will be an All-American before he's done in college football, wherever he is. Not just a freshman All-American, just a straight-up All-American.
Yeah, it's a big blow, and it was eerie and weird and kind of unprecedented how it all shook out in that OU's like, okay, let's go to practice. And they're out there practicing. Bill Bedenbaugh's like, where's my left guard? I don't know where my left guard is. Okay, somebody else get in there. We'll move on. He's probably taking a test and forgot maybe he slept in. I'm gonna treadmill his ass. I'm gonna get him on the Stairmaster. You know, one of those things, right? You're thinking Bill Bedenbaugh's like, wonder where he is. Then during practice, we get the Hayes Fawcett tweet. He's transferring. He wants to jump in the portal.
It was weirder than that because yesterday at practice, we have that open practice viewing, right? And so all of us are out there on the field for the first 20-ish minutes, and you were taking note of, okay, I don't see Marcus Major. Is that an opt-out or is that finals? Who knows? But, Tawi Walker's here. Dylan Gabriel, he's not here. Well, we know why. He's headed to Eugene, get stuff started. A number of the coaches, like DeMarco Murray, Miguel Chavis, Bill Bedenbaugh at least, they're out recruiting right now. Like, some of these bowl practices are kind of weird in this lead up to signing day because you've got half the staff that's running it and half the staff's out recruiting and all that stuff. And it gets to the offensive line group, which is they just by circumstance of convenience, the offensive line stand right where we are let in. And that's like the starting point for the areas we're allowed to stand at the open practice. So all of us are standing over there by the offensive line. And it starts to be almost a whisper within all of us media hacks is we're all looking around going, anybody see 70? No, nobody sees Cayden Green. Okay, let's see what that thing looks like. And then literally we hear okay, you're on to period, whatever it is. Practice is now closed. And as we are all walking back off the practice field and you look down at your phone for the first time, that's when the tweet pops. And then we come back at 1:30 at the end of practice. McKay Matauer has no idea what we're talking about. He's like, I hadn't heard anything about a portal. I just assumed he was taking a final. It's finals week. Guys are in and out of practice. Billy Bowman had no clue we were like breaking the news to the players that Cayden Green had announced that he was intending to enter the transfer portal.
So Bedenbaugh wasn't even there. He was out recruiting, you're saying?
Yeah.
Wow. See, I wasn't there either. I was indisposed, shall we say. And so I wasn't able to attend. But yeah, I didn't realize that some of the coaches were actually gone on the road recruiting. I thought when practice resumed, they all reconvened from the recruiting trail. But I could see where they would let their assistants coach them up early in this stage practice. Fascinating stuff. I've been reading as much as I can about it, watching as much as I can about it, and Cayden Green hasn't returned any calls from. It met with Venables and met with Bedenbaugh last week, per usual, exit interview type stuff is what I'm told. And they had no clue that he was looking around or disgruntled or wanted to play tackle, right? I mean, if that's part of it, I don't think any of that's part of it, Ryan. I'm told that this is 1,000,000% NIL related, but just watch where he goes now, okay? Watch where he lands, and then do your old school detective journalism work here. Follow the money, and maybe the NCAA will have its very first open and shut tampering case in the transfer portal era, where somebody actually gets in trouble for tampering with somebody while they're still attached to a roster, because that's apparently what happened.
It's just bizarre, and Oklahoma was floored. The players were obviously floored, all that stuff. This is a guy that 6 days ago now, when Spencer Brown, the Michigan State right tackle, who committed, he's one of the first guys that's quote tweeting it and saying welcome and all that stuff, which Twitter's not real life. It's not the end of the world. It's not everything. But we see a ton of guys that like someone commits to their school and they just don't say anything on Twitter because they're on to the next thing. Like, if you're not in, you don't have to do the welcome tweet. Like, it's not like we saw 85 guys come out of the woodwork to welcome it. That's not a requirement. It's just so bizarre. And we talked about it coming in that, hey, here are the names we expected. Here are some names who wouldn't be shocked if they hit the portal. And yeah, there's probably going to be one that everyone goes, oh. Unfortunately for Oklahoma, it was at a massive, massive piece of the offensive line. And that's a group that Bill Bedenbaugh, when Lincoln Riley was here, they were not telling him to bring in 5 guys regardless. It was the quality over quantity thing. And they're still having to take portal depth pieces just to level that back out. He missed on some of his top targets in this last recruiting class, so it's not the A team. There's a lot of pressure on Bill Bedenbaugh. He has got to wrangle in a big-time 2025 class. This line's not SEC ready. It is not without Cayden Green.
Nope, it's not. And if you gave me a roster, which I have right here, I have a roster, an OU roster, and say, rank these guys, rank them, who's going to be the most likely to leave in the portal and who's going to be the least likely. However many are on this roster, 100, 105, I don't know. He would be Cayden Green would have been at the very bottom. maybe last among all of them, because like you said earlier, he's going to be an All-American. He came off the bench as a freshman and in a great degree to a great degree helped save the season. I don't want to overblow what he did, but he came off the bench. T'Vondre Sweat was in the backfield on every play, and he came off the bench, played left guard, and that stopped. T'Vondre Sweat was no longer in the backfield on every play. He's that kind of talent. He is from Oklahoma, born in Oklahoma, grew up in Oklahoma. His parents played sports in Oklahoma. He's from Lee Summit North and is coached by a former Sooner guy, right? I mean, just look at the number of dots that you can connect. And it's just shocking. It's just utterly shocking that he is the one who hangs the coaches out to dry, doesn't return their calls, isn't communicating with his head coach in high school. I mean, his high school head coach isn't communicating with media after having a great relationship with a lot of the media in this area. He's gone. It reminds me, this is going to crack you up. I hope. In high school, all right, we had a guy, I'm not going to name his name. He might be listening, or maybe he's not. Maybe he's somewhere else right now. He just disappeared one day. Like his dad, woke him up. It was like one of those, like a John Cusack movie or something. His dad woke him up and said, "We got to go. Get in the car. They're after us." Like what? The IRS, the mob. He disappeared. Like didn't withdraw from school. He just stopped coming. He was on the football team. And the second semester is like, "Have y'all seen this dude?" "No, we haven't seen him. I don't know where he went." Nobody knew where he went. And for the rest of our lives, up to now, 30, 40 years later, whatever, nobody has heard from him. He is gone. It's like, damn, where did he go? That's what Cayden Green has done. It's like, wait a minute, where did he go? But he'll turn up somewhere, obviously.
Yeah, it'll be a little easier to spot Cayden Green as he'll be on a college football field, just absolutely crushing skulls somewhere across the country. But yeah, it's one of those things that, look, it's hard. I know that there's a lot of like, oh my gosh, panic in portal season. This is a kneecap to Oklahoma's offense. Whether you look at what does the offensive line now look like in the Alamo Bowl, I mean, we can go through that. My best guess would be Walter Rouse and McKay Mathieu, they're finishing it thing out. Rame and Guyton opted out. So I would guess that you have Walter Rouse at left tackle, Jake Sexton back at right tackle, McKay Mathieu at right guard. Before seeing the practice, I would have just assumed that Troy Everett plays left guard and you just bring in Josh Bates at center, even though he is a true freshman, because McKay Mathieu after practice said, I can make all the calls. I can do everything from the right guard spot. It's all about making life as easy on Jackson Arnold as possible. But Troy Everett was standing off to the side yesterday. He was like fully dressed, so he wasn't in like street clothes. Like Justin Harrington was there, and he was in jersey top, no pads, shorts, the brace on the left leg. Everett was dressed head to toe, but I didn't see him take any reps or anything. He was just kind of chilling with the offensive line group. So if Everett, whatever that is, it didn't look like, if it was him being banged up, it certainly didn't look serious if he's dressed head to toe or anything like that. But if he can't go, or if that develops into something, then you're really going, who on this roster? Is it Nick Taylor time? What are you looking at? And you don't want to get your true freshman who's starting his first game.
Right.
You sure don't want to get him hurt heading into winter workouts and spring practice where they got to install a new offense under Seth Luttrell and Joe John Finley.
So who was the left guard when you were watching? Was it Caleb Schaefer?
They were just hitting they never fanned out when I was over there because it was just they were rolling through hitting the sled.
Okay.
But Everett was not in line hitting the sled. Everyone was hitting the sled, and Everett was just standing.
I would think the way I wrote it down was left to right, Rouse, Everett, or Caleb Schaefer, Bates at center, Mathieu, and Sexton. That's pretty easy. But depth-wise, you start getting into Jake Taylor. Where's he going to play? Aaron Parks, who's already been in the portal and came back, right? Bad timing for him. He's now, I would think he's now one of the top backups if he doesn't leave portal-wise officially again this time. Nate Anderson is in the portal. Was he out there at practice?
I'm gonna be honest. I wasn't really looking because that wasn't one of our having no knowledge of the green stuff heading in. Like the offensive line group was not super. it was supposed to be very boring, actually. It was supposed to be, hey,
Yeah.
you know who the tackles are going to be, you know who the guards are going to be, and we were just going to peek over real quick to see if we could figure out between Everett or Bates, and then we start looking and we're like, there is a massive human missing. What is happening? And then that's what it went to.
I know Nate Anderson's in the portal, but so is Tawi Walker. So there's the possibility he could come back and play for a game and play in the bowl game and get the bowl gift and hang out with his team at Christmas. That happens frequently. Other than that, you're looking at a couple of true freshmen who got some snaps this year, but Logan Hallen and Heath Ozeda are the two true freshmen. After that, you're looking at walk-ons and other true freshmen who aren't necessarily haven't gotten any time this year. That's your offensive line. Those are the backups anyway. Those are the primary guys going into the Alamo Bowl, which is just weird to me.
It's weird, but in a weird way, it's a spot Bill Beanbo was in literally last bowl season. Because if you remember, by the time we got to Orlando, McCade Matire was the only starter from the regular season who played in the bowl game because Andrew Rame had to get the surgery, so he actually cut his season a little bit short so he get back for winter workouts.
Mm-hmm.
When we got to Orlando on game day, that's the first moment we found out that Chris Murray wasn't going to give it a go. So Oklahoma had 4 new offensive linemen plus Matire as there. Matire had moved from left guard over to right guard to make way for Bird. You had Rob Conjul at center. You had Sexton at left tackle for the 3 plays, Guyton at right tackle. Then it became Parks at left tackle. So Oklahoma was under a makeshift offensive line. Bill Beanbo put together a good plan with that group before, but you also had a veteran quarterback and you weren't trying to protect a true freshman making his first start.
Maybe you could build some kind of statue to McCade Matire for being in 3 straight bowl games, being the guy who's coming back, and everybody's moving around him, and he's just standing there in his 3-point position. You know, that would be awesome. He's he transferred from. He loves OU. Grew up in Houston. Wanted to go to OU. They didn't need him at the time. He goes to Cal, proves he can play, plays for 3 years, comes back, plays for Oklahoma for 3 years. Crazy. But, yeah, build the man a statue. We might as well talk about the other portal guys who are coming in. We got quite a few that are leaving. The count was up to 15 today that are gone or that are planning to leave or entering the portal, have entered the portal, will enter the portal after the game. I don't know. 15 out. Right now, there are 3 guys coming in. They got a cornerback from San Diego State, Des Malone. He's committed. By the way, he talked to Randall, and Randall had a story about him this morning, I believe. And so check that out, AllSooners.com. Read more about Des Malone, why he picked OU, what he thinks about OU, what he likes about OU's chances against Arizona, who he's played against in his career. Thought that was interesting. And his boy, Caleb. I almost said Caleb Green. Caleb Kelly is his guy. So from Fresno. So read all about that at allsooners.com. He's a 2-time All-Mountain West honorable mention cornerback. I think 6'2", 200. He's a guy that's going to be able to come in and lend some immediate athletic ability, some immediate experience to the cornerback position, which is a position of need, Ryan.
Yeah, he should fill the Woody Washington role as vet guy that can come in, and he's big, physical, so you shouldn't worry about the wear and tear of the SEC. That gives Oklahoma a different body type just because Wagner and Gentry are a little undersized. Makari Vickers, I wouldn't classify him as undersized, and certainly not Jacoby Johnson, but it's a pretty diverse room as far as height, weight, size, speed, all that stuff. It's not the old speed D where they needed you to be this tall and run this speed, and they'll teach you how to play whatever later, and then never actually taught anyone how to play anything. But outside of, Woody Washington hasn't officially announced anything either way, but I think the expectation, everyone's trending toward expecting Woody to go pursue some pro opportunities after the Alamo Bowl. And outside of that, Gentry, everyone would be yes, stoked about him if he could just play the whole year. Everyone knows the story on just how many injuries he dealt with. And then behind that, Kenai Walker, I don't think is someone you trust to go a whole season as the starter. Corey Vickers, Josiah Wagner, Jacoby Johnson just didn't get a ton of opportunities to have a huge bit of run. And I think that much like offensive line, it's they've got talent recruited, but I would not label that group SEC ready without a couple of additions. I would not label this cornerback group they are more unproven with an incomplete talent there, but they need somebody to kind of be the glue to hold that together. And I think Oklahoma's hoping that can be a veteran in Des Malone.
Oh, you picked up a wide receiver in the portal as well, Dion Burks, second team All Big Ten at Purdue. He was regarded by some, I don't know who grades this, but he was regarded by some as the best wide receiver in the transfer portal. Oklahoma got him something like 670 yards receiving last year. Very productive, very experienced, but a guy who is going to come in and fill some spots immediately. When I say immediately, I'm talking about next semester, spring football, 2024, SEC, not for the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah, and he's someone that, depending on where you looked, he was like a consensus top 5 receiver in the portal with all the portal rankings, all that stuff. Very explosive after the catch. He's like 5'9", 5'10", but an absolute speedster. He's one of those guys that he hits you on it. You hit him on a slant, and if he can get away from the first guy, he might just run and run and run. He does have drop issues. That's probably the biggest thing. Like last year was his breakout year. This past season, 2 years ago, he was around Purdue, but wasn't like a huge contributor. If you look at his drop rate is like ridiculously high, which is something he'll have to hone in. Obviously, with Emmett Jones, that may just be first year as a breakout guy, struggle with focus, maybe just unlucky with bad balls coming in that get attributed to him. Also, PFF grading is not perfect by any means, so it's more of a I don't take that as the law as much as just just something of note. His drop rate is outside the norm, but he also just needs to come in and be a complementary piece with an Angel Anthony returning off an injury, a Nick Anderson, a Jaden Gibson, a Jalil Farouk. You feel like you've got great production there. He can just come in. He's a proven guy. He's got that speed. If he mops that up, he's going to be a huge piece of the Oklahoma offense. And even if he doesn't, to be the third or fourth option and have a guy that can house it like that, yes, you take that every time. It's not a big concern. I just wonder if he's more of a second or third option than a guy that can fight for maybe a surprise first option or whatever. But it also, too, Emmett Jones has signed a really big wide receiver class. I really like this because it gives those guys 1 year to, like, if they can push, great, immediately. If not, then you bring Jaquez Petaway along, let those guys develop, and then in a year from now, when you would assume that Andrew Anthony's headed off, Jalil Farouk's headed off, Burks will have the option to head off. Like you'll have those guys ready to slot on in and fill in year 2 in the SEC in the 2025 season.
If they don't enter the transfer portal, shockingly and suddenly, whenever that happens, guaranteed somebody will. And then I think we talked last week about the offensive lineman from Michigan State, Spencer Brown. He's going to play tackle. He's going to replace Rouse, we presume, at left tackle. 2-year starter.
He'll be on the right side.
He'll be on the right. Okay, he has played right tackle, but I was thinking he was probably they were going to go with Sexton on the left. You're right. What you said is correct. I misunderstood what I was thinking earlier. Sexton will be on the left, we presume. And then the new guy, Spencer Brown, will be on the right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that should be all buttoned up, and that's one piece of an experienced offensive line. Now Oklahoma suddenly, John, I think they got to go get 2 starters at guard, frankly. Yeah. And then a depth piece. Like they probably need 3 more guys in the offensive line.
Have you ever heard anybody say they misunderstood what they said? Because I just did. Seriously, I was like left side, right side, left side.
Hey, we were zooming through everyone. There's been so much left, right, guard,
Yeah, but, I knew what I meant. I just didn't know what I said.
Exactly.
Here's an interesting note. Spencer Brown played against Davis Bevel in the Chick-fil-A Bowl back in 2021.
That was another opt-out palooza.
It was. Yeah. Bowl games are getting weird. They're almost not fun to watch anymore. I don't know.
Well, unless you got a true freshman quarterback looking to make his first start, which was, who we talked to yesterday in Norman.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. He was good. We'll talk about him talking to the press, what he said yesterday during his first interview as QB1 in Norman. So your outgoing names are Cayden Green, Tyler Guyton, Andrew Rame, Kelvin Gilliam, Dalen Smothers, Marcus Major, Key Lawrence, which surprised me, Savion Byrd, which surprised me a little bit. We talked about this last week. Reggie Grimes, Nate Anderson, Dylan Gabriel, Tawi Walker, who's playing in the Alamo Bowl, Jason Llewellyn, DJ Graham, and then Marcus Hicks left back in November. So like Ryan said at the top, a bunch of guys who probably just need a fresh start, including, frankly, Dillon Gabriel, knowing that something that went under the radar last week, Ryan, when Brent was asked about by me, I guess, was that me? Was that my question? No, it was Trammell followed up with what happened with Dillon. I thought this went under the radar. He said Dillon knew he was welcome to come back and compete. Don't let that slide. Don't let that flow under the bridge like there's nothing there. Those are carefully chosen words. Dillon knew he was welcome to come back and compete. In other words, if Dillon, he's welcome to come back, but he's going to be in the quarterback room competing with Jackson Arnold. They weren't anointing him as the starter just because he had been a 4-year starter in college. This is Jackson Arnold's time. Wow. I thought that was powerful.
Yeah, and you had you kind of pair that with Dillon was in this spot as the young guy. This is paraphrasing. At UCF, Dillon was thrust into a role, but then he obviously as a true freshman was excellent. And so it was like the young guy that the team wanted to roll with, except in that situation, Dillon was what Jackson Arnold is now. And you listen to, what we're going to get into with Jackson Arnold here in a second, where he kind of talked about, once Dillon made his decision and then Jeff Lebby was at Mississippi State, Oklahoma still was absolutely the number one spot for him, which makes me wonder if Dillon was still at Oklahoma, if that would have been more of a thought process. And that's where you get into, you're welcome to come back and compete, but this guy's the guy. We're not losing 3 years of Jackson Arnold for 1 more year of Dillon Gabriel. That would be a bad situation for how you develop your quarterbacks and get that quarterback room trucking along. If Jackson Arnold is everything that the coaching staff truly believes he will be, which is a stud.
Yeah, and Jackson said at some point during the interview, and we'll talk about this more in depth coming up, but he said at some point that was something that I had to evaluate. That's something I had to think about, was what Dillon was going to do. Was I going to stay or was I going to go somewhere else? Interesting. Tell you what we'll do. We'll talk about Jackson Arnold. We'll continue the conversation when we come back. Plus, you gotta spend a lot of time on Billy Bowman and Danny Stutsman and that whole scenario. That is the 2 biggest recruiting wins in Brent Venables' career so far. Maybe that and Dillon Gabriel. I don't know how hard they had to work on Dillon Gabriel, right? But they did got him for 2 years. And don't forget, it's SEC Day here in Oklahoma. We'll tell you more about that next on the AllSooners Podcast. Hey, if you're on Twitter, give all_Sooners a follow. You can find me at John E. Hoover. Ryan is at Ryan _Ryan Chapman. Ross is at Ross Lovelace. Simple enough. And Randall is at Randall Sweet 5. You're going to want to follow him for all the latest recruiting. He's been busy. He's been a busy boy, and National Signing Day is 1 week from today. I'm not sure how we're going to handle that. We're going to be in Norman. We're going to be podcasting. We're going to be doing all kinds of stuff. But we'll have it for you at allsooners.com. We'll lay out a plan and have some good coverage for you. The website, by the way, again, always allsooners.com, is a Fan Nation affiliate and is part of the Sports Illustrated Network. Remember, it's free. It's all free at AllSooners. No signups, no emails, no passwords, no credit cards. Segment 2 of the AllSooners Podcast is presented by Infinite Asset Advisors. Do you know what your largest risk in retirement is? It's longevity, unfortunately, because the longer you live, the more likely you are to run out of money. The more likely the stock market is going to crash, or the more likely taxes are going to go up. All that stuff, including inflation. Inflation is going to eat into your retirement funds the longer you live, right? So there's only one way to take longevity off the table as a risk, and that is with guaranteed lifetime income. If you don't have guaranteed lifetime income stream in place, you may still be able to retire, but the math and science proves that you are probably not going to be happy in retirement because you're going to be afraid of running out of money. It happens. We see it all the time. So let us show you how to make sure you have guaranteed paychecks coming in to cover your basic expenses. And then you can use your other investments for your paychecks. Visit the website infiniteassetadvisors.com to learn more, or call 512-710-7400. 0130. Just to let you know, Infinite Asset Advisors is owned and operated by lifelong Sooner fans. So give them a call, get on the website, send them an email. Check it out. All right, segment 2, Ryan. We said we were going to save the best for last, and that is Billy Bowman and Danny Stutsman are coming back. What a performance. What a production by Danny Stutsman. Billy Bowman went first. Billy Bowman, I think last Friday, said, I'm coming back to OU. Stutsman comes back a couple days later. Everybody had read the report previously that he was leaving. He hadn't declared for the draft, but he told Brent Venables that his intention was to go to the draft. And then he just has a change of heart. He talks to Venables again. He talked about it yesterday during interviews. Both of them did, actually, Bowman and Stutsman. But he has a change of heart. And he comes out and he says, talks to his dad. I talked to Steve Stutsman. I'm pretty sure you talked to Steve Stutsman at some point. And they came up with the conclusion that he doesn't want to be Uncle Rico, where he's just sitting on the porch chewing on a steak saying, man, you ever just wish you could go back? I could throw a football over them mountains. I'm a linebacker, so I could tackle them mountains. But Danny Stutsman's coming back because he didn't want to have regrets. Listen, you go to the NFL, who knows what's going to happen? You could get hurt as a rookie, training camp, never play in a game, never play football again, and there you're sitting there looking back at you could have had one more year as an Oklahoma Sooner in college football. He didn't want to have that. He wanted to play out as much as he could college football. You got to love him for that.
Yeah, and he talked about, he had to go into that first meeting with Brent Venables with conviction, because he's like, you don't go to Coach BV's office and not know what you're going to do, because he said, otherwise you'll be there for like an hour as he's trying to talk you out of it. So he had to go into that meeting knowing he was going to say, I think I want to declare, and I'm going to declare for the NFL draft. But then he said that Brent Venables called him on Friday and just wanted to go over everything one more time. Then Friday night, Billy Bowman, he declares that he is returning. He is coming back. And Billy Bowman, he talked about just, hey, I feel like one of my strengths is self-awareness. I know I'm not the finished product. I wanted to come back to Oklahoma and become more of a finished product before he headed off to the NFL. That's what Billy Bowman said yesterday. And Danny Stutsman was asked, did that decision play into yours at all? We so often think everyone's in their own lane making their own decision. Danny Stutsman actually said 200% Billy Bowman's decision to come back affected him and made him want to come back that much more, as you got Billy, you got Danny, you got Jalil Farouk, and there's one or two other guys from that 2021 recruiting class that have been through the last year of Lincoln, these last 2 years, and will play in the SEC. They want to close that thing out together. So then from there, Danny said he was locked up in his room all weekend, mulling it over. He said it was a headache, one of the longest weeks of his life. And then he decided in proper to come on back. And that's where he said that, the equipment staff had cleaned out his locker. That's where that Instagram post came from. He's like, it wasn't really trolling. It was just, he came in and he saw his locker being empty, and that was his reaction. They repurposed that video you saw from with Brian Bosworth was actually shot like a month ago as part of a Butt Kiss Award campaign that was never going to see the light of day, as Danny was left off that semifinalist list. And so they just had to repurpose that a little bit. That's how you got the video. So Danny was like, I wasn't shooting videos and stuff. He's like, I don't think I left my room all weekend long. And that arrived him back at Oklahoma, where he basically said, Brent Venables has poured too much into him. He thought one more year was the thing to do. And so now you've got a spine of the defense. You've got Danny Stutsman coming back. You got Billy Bowman coming back. Up the middle, Oklahoma's going to be veteran laden, as they need to make a big jump in defense yet again to offset what we talked about in the first segment, which is who knows what this offense is going to look like, because we don't know who's going to be blocking for Jackson Arnold and Gavin Sawchuk and those guys.
Yeah. They may have to get like Friday Night Lights creative with their offensive line, but defensively, I think this establishes, like I said at the top, something about Brent Venables' culture, because Steve Stutsman told me he got a more than favorable draft grade, all right, draft projection. He declined to tell me what that was, but more than favorable. What is that, second round for Danny Stutsman? And he said if anybody else would have gotten this draft projection, they would be going to the NFL. Danny wanted to come back and play one more year of college football. That's probably a dad sticking his neck out a little bit. I've done that a few times for my sports kids. You're not going to find anybody faster. You're not going to find anybody who cares more, works hard. Well, it's athletics. But I think what this teaches us is when Brian Bosworth speaks, we need to open our ears and listen to what he's saying. Ryan, when I ran into the Boz in the men's room, of all places, at Boone Pickens Stadium, we're standing there and washing our hands, and I go, Brian. He looks at me, he goes, hey, how's it going? I said, well, what's with the mohawk? And he goes, oh, that was for Danny's deal. For Danny's deal. And I was like, cool. Don't know what that means. He had just done the mohawk because that was the week that they were paring down to the semifinalists of the Butkus Award. So he had just shaved the mohawk. It was fresh. It was a fresh cut. And you can see him in those photos, in that photo shoot, in that video. Fresh mohawk. So that's when they did the video. That's exactly when they did the video. And he told me without telling me. And I was like, damn, I wish I'd have been paying attention. What deal? Ask a follow-up question. Hoover, you're the king of the follow-up questions. You're the king of annoying somebody with follow-up questions. Go ahead and ask. I should have asked. What deal? What, Danny, what do you mean? What deal? I had my hand-washing hat on and not my reporter hat on.
I was about to say, you can be forgiven for, I think all of us in the bathroom are not thinking of, I need 4 follow-ups, and also there's a game going on out there that I'm also in the middle of covering as well. I think you can be forgiven for that. Danny did confirm, though, it wasn't a mink coat. It was the mink coat. It was very it was not a replica. It was the coat from that great care was taken to make sure, okay, I need that back after you're done with the photos. I got to get that. I have spoken. I have put my word on that coat safely arriving back at the King's house. So that was key for Stutsman to not mess with the coat too much. Also doesn't get to keep the Corvette. That's a bummer.
Yeah. Does he even get to keep the license plate?
Maybe. We didn't ask about the license plate.
Actual license plate. Did it say Florida? I can't remember.
No, it was an Oklahoma plate.
Oklahoma plate. All right. What a production. That was a cool video. All due respect to Billy Bowman for doing it his way. But Stutsman is, the sunglasses and the Jordans and the Corvette and the fur coat and the icon of Brian Bosworth. Damn, that was impressive. Anyway.
Vocal leader, silent leader. It all fits.
It
all makes sense. Everyone made their announcement the correct way, I think.
You got it. Exactly right. But as I said, getting those two guys back who had an opportunity to go to the NFL and leave this life behind. They both said, I want to play college football for as long as I can. And you have to admire that, that characteristic in both guys. And as I said at the top, maybe this is an indicator that Brent Venables has established and built a culture here that that is attractive to guys. And now you can start to recruit to that. You can start to recruit to the fact that, hey, I had a possible first round, maybe second round linebacker who came back for his senior year, and a safety who had an option and he came back for his senior year. Those are now recruiting angles that Brent Venables can use. Another one that he can use is Jackson Arnold is a freshman quarterback who is starting the bowl game. Again, they're not afraid to play freshmen, Cayden Green. They're not afraid to play freshmen, but here's Jackson Arnold as a true freshman finishing up his first season. He's going to start the bowl game. He had a lot to say yesterday, Ryan.
Yeah, it was a really interesting interview, and I'd encourage you just head over to AllSooners.com, watch it. It's right up there. If you go to the story that I wrote where Jackson Arnold, the headline is, he's pumped for the opportunity. Just first off, good story by a subpar writer, but I thought it was a good story.
You did great.
The video should be at the top too, but it might be an easier way to sift through that. But he covered a lot. We talked a little bit about how he had said there would have been a decision to probably make if Gabriel was coming back, but with Gabriel leaving, he has built a good relationship with Seth Littrell. I think he got to build a unique relationship with Littrell because it was Littrell's first year as an analyst in the spring. It was Arnold's first year. So we kind of talked about they were learning the terminology and the offense together because they had the same experience. and that he's just been a guy that they're really comfortable with. He's enjoyed Seth Luttrell taking over. He's like, you can tell he's been a head coach with just the quiet confidence he has in the meeting room and the way he commands a meeting room. Arnold had talked about how, you might not get to see full Seth Luttrell offense flavor and stuff in the bowl game just because they're still using Levy's terminology and all that stuff, and the big changes will happen this spring. But he's a guy that's excited to show it off. And we know that Jackson Arnold's confident, but I think it takes a level of confidence to be able to admit, too, that, the first couple of days at practice were kind of weird because all the corrections need to be made. He's used to, like, Dylan being that guy that comes in, like, hey, we need to do this rep over again for this, this, and that. And Jackson was like, that has to be me now. And so it was a little awkward, different, whatever at first, but it didn't take but one or two practices for him to be like, okay, no, I need to jump back in and I'm that guy now. And when we talked to McCain Matire, when you talked to Jalil Farouk, they almost they were respectful, but they almost scoffed at questions. They're just like, yeah, Jackson's a dude. We're not worried about him whatsoever. There's literally no worry at all about making that transition from Dylan to Jackson. Full faith. No one's even talked about it because it's just yeah, that's our guy.
His first regular season start is going to be as a quarterback in the Southeastern Conference. Not the first game. They'll play a non-conference game, of course. But this time next year, they're going to be wrapping up their first year in the SEC. Ryan, it's SEC Day here in Oklahoma. In other words, the SEC and the SEC Network are revealing Oklahoma's schedule, as well as everybody else's. But you're watching this because it's the AllSooners podcast. The schedule for 2024 is going to be set. It is set right now, but it's going to be announced, revealed tonight, 6 o'clock p.m. on SEC Network. We'll have the story, of course, when the news breaks. But here's what we know: OU versus Tennessee in Norman, September 21st. Josh Heupel coming back home as the head coach, September 21st, and then November 23rd. Is the Alabama Crimson Tide and presumably Nick Saban, right, coming to Norman. That'll be November 23rd. We don't know really much of anything else. We have some inklings about when the Texas game will be played. I think it'll be early. I don't think it'll be that second Saturday. I think it'll be the first Saturday, but we'll see. A couple of open dates next year in the schedule. We know the 3 non-conference games. By the time you listen to or watch this podcast, sorry, what?
It's the 4 non-conference games.
4, that's right. 4 non-conference games. Thank you. Yeah.
How did you forget the Maine Black Bears? That's your guys, too.
That's right. They're going to be coming to Norman. My guess is November. We don't have any of that confirmed, but we'll know tonight, Ryan. And a lot of people are going to be watching this podcast or listening to this podcast after the show, so good on you. But if you're watching it, if I'm able to get this sucker posted before, get your SEC hats on because it's going to be it's going to be fun tonight to see what the SEC does with Oklahoma's schedule.
Yeah, and we already know the matchups, right? We know who OU will play on the road, who they'll play at home. We know all of that. It's just filling out the dates. But I think the interesting thing that maybe people are not used to, I know that there's the excitement because it's the first SEC schedule. Where do the 2 byes fall? That's always the easiest talking point coming out. What's the trap game? They're all trap games. The schedule's really hard. Yeah. Look at the final college football playoff rankings and then go, oh, that team's on the schedule, that team. But no, with the way college football is going to operate next year, of the Big Ten exclusively being on Fox, CBS, NBC, the SEC being 100% in-house with ESPN/ABC. ABC paid like a bill for the one CBS game of the week. And the SEC are all of ESPN ABC's number 1 games. All the Big 12 stuff will be backfilled after they set the SEC schedule. So not every single game will come out with a kickoff time, but there will be a handful of kickoff times for next year announced Wednesday night. That's something new that no fans are used to because it's new to the SEC this year as well. On Good Morning America this morning, they officially announced the Georgia-Alabama date, which had been reported by ESPN already. But they also was like, oh, by the way, it's 7:30 Eastern on ABC. Like they were like, we have a kickoff time and channel. Greg Sankey talked about that with us in the Cotton Bowl press box, is that a bunch of the 11 a.m. games, you'll know in like June what those games are, June, July, somewhere in there. So we'll know SEC kickoff times at least for the big games, probably well in advance, which will make sifting through the week to week a little bit easier because it's not going to be 12 games of unknown kickoff times for Oklahoma. We might get 2 or 3 of those Wednesday night.
That makes it so much easier as a fan, I'm assuming, but certainly as a sports writer to know your kickoff time is set, and those things can always change too. So don't like bet the house on anything, but it just makes it so much easier. If you know it's a night game, maybe you can roll in that morning. If you know it's a morning game, you know you have to roll in the night before Friday night, and you can get the heck out of there on Saturday and get on the way back home. Traveling in the Big 12 was always like my wife would, and she never understood the context of, well, how do you not know the kickoff time? It's just a few days away. It's next week. The game is next week. How do you not know what time they're going to kick off? Because it's the Big 12. And that's the way they do their business with their TV networks. SEC doesn't always do it that way. SEC simplifies things and says, you know what? Let's figure it out in February and March when all these teams are going to kick off. Yes.
It's great. The SEC also has a map in their office, and they don't take their media day to Las Vegas, despite the fact that it's in none of their media markets.
That is west of the Western schools. Like, okay, that's cool. It doesn't matter, though. We'll be in Dallas for SEC Media Days.
We will.
Where SEC Media Days belongs, in Dallas. Why not?
12, look, it could just be a scheduling thing, but the optics of year one of OU and Texas being in the SEC, and in year one, you're not holding media day where your conference headquarters are, and you have to go to Vegas while the SEC is already locked down.
So there's no other places in the city of Dallas or the metroplex of Dallas-Fort Worth to hold Big 12 Media Days. There's no other spots. You have to fly everybody to Dallas. Is that what I'm being told?
Your Mark's done a lot of good Vegas. Initially. Since adding teams, he's taken the basketball programs to New York City. He's taken the marquee game, Kansas and Houston, and gave it to Mexico City in basketball. College sports ain't the NBA and ain't the NFL, brother. I don't know if you're going to be continuing to hit
WWE hint there, by the way.
Yeah. Well, he runs it more like WWE than he does just a normal. I'm just like, it's what Greg Sankey always says. They expanded without getting outside of their footprint, and the Big 12 no longer. I don't think they know what their footprint is. Like, they're in New York City, they're in Vegas, whatever. It's anyway. I would have loved a trip to Vegas, comped, but I guess we can't comp sportsbook losses. I don't think that AllSooners covers those, but the buffet would have been. I would have picked some buffets out. We would have been good.
We're gonna get some Jack Links, and we're gonna go to Vegas, brother, and it's gonna be a throwdown at Big 12 Media Days. Okay.
If it is in the Sphere, though, I'm gonna be pissed.
Yeah. Hey, if it is at the Sphere, we might go cover it just in case. Somebody tweeted at me, so you're gonna cover Oklahoma State now? And I said, for a trip to Vegas, hell yeah.
It might. Just might.
Mike Gundy, how you doing? Good to see you out here in the casinos.
Welcome. Anyways, that was not on the rundown. I'm sorry.
That was good. It was actually on my rundown.
Okay. It was not on the rundown given to me.
So, a couple of quick news and notes that I wanted to get to. Brent Venables, OU, has hired a couple of offensive assistants to help Seth Littrell with quarterbacks. Remember when Seth Littrell's never coached quarterbacks? He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not going to be able to coach Jackson Arnold. Well, Brent Venables went out and hired a couple of guys who were going to help him with quarterback technique, understanding of the offense, looking for options, whatever it is, whatever the nuances that go into coaching quarterbacks on the Division I football level. Brent Venables hired a guy by the name of Jack Lowry. He's a former Missouri quarterback. He was Drew Lock's backup for 3 years. He worked with Josh Heupel at Missouri, and then Josh Heupel hired him at Tennessee to be an assistant quarterbacks coach. So he's going to be the assistant QB coach helping Seth Littrell. And then another guy, Ty Hatcher, was hired. He's a former quarterback at Samford, not Stanford, Samford. in Alabama. His dad is the head coach there. So his dad is a college football head coach. Okay. He worked previously for Texas A&M, where he learned under who? Jimbo and Bobby Petrino most recently. So he's going to be an offensive GA. The word is that he's got an extremely sharp coaching mind, that both of these guys have been on a coaching fast track since they were players. Their head coaches and their offensive coordinators and their position coaches are like, that dude's going to be a coach. So a couple of good young minds to get in there and help. I presume, since they've already announced on their Twitter bios that they work for OU, I presume that they're going to be helping out with the Alamo Bowl, December 28th in San Antonio.
Yeah, and this fits with I think that this might be the biggest program piece that Brent lifted from Dabo and his time at Clemson, which was they were very successful with it's the PAW program, I think, which is similar to, it's their version of the Soul Mission. It's where Brent got his inspiration for the Soul Mission.
Yep.
They were able to routinely get guys on the defensive line to stay one more year that everyone thought they were probably going to stay in college football to chase championships. They were able to absolutely load up on talented young coaching minds as GAs and then analysts. And there was not a lot of attrition at the staff level at Clemson, but when they did, they were able to promote from within. And that way people are familiar with Clemson, how they run things, stuff like that. Well, we've already seen Jeff Lebby leaves. What's happening? A promotion from within. Seth Luttrell off the analyst bench into the starting lineup as the OC alongside Joe John Finley. Some of those support staffers go with, and now you reload with guys that have been fast-tracked into coaching and bright young minds. And so be interested to see what effect they have. And it's kind of, A, if they get hired away, then great. But B, it's also a fail-safe in case you get more guys churned off your staff, which is ultimately a sign of a healthy program if you are doing so well on both sides of the ball that people are coming after your assistants.
Yeah, and I'm told that Matt Wells is high on Brent Venable's list to help out, continue staying Norman and coach quarterbacks and help out with quarterbacks and whatnot as an offensive analyst. But Matt Wells has been up for head coaching jobs and offensive coordinator jobs. So he's looking for, that next big opportunity while, thanking Brent and saying, hey, keep me in mind, whatever their communication level is. Matt Wells is a guy that would absolutely serve the program in a positive manner, in a hugely positive manner if he sticks around for another year. But it sounds like he might want to, be a head coach again. Who wouldn't? After you've been a head coach, I would think it's tough to sit in that role. You got any more observations from practice that you saw that you wanted to get to before we jump into basketball?
Rattling through it, we hit some of the bigger ones. Tawi Walker's there, obviously. It's difficult to get a true head count because it's finals week, so some guys are in and out. And on top of that, with some of the scout team guys, people were wearing different numbers. So like in the running back room, you were sifting through. We didn't see Dalen Smothers. I believe I saw Caleb Hicks, but I believe I saw Caleb Hicks wearing a different number, which made some of the just math on that hard to be like, wait a minute, there's not a 0, but he runs exactly like Caleb Hicks. It looks like him in the face mask. I think that's Caleb Hicks, but stuff like that. But there were so many coaches that were in and out, like we mentioned, recruiting guys that were not in and out. Seth Luttrell, Joe John Finley, and Jackson Arnold had moved up to the top spot in the stretching line where Dylan Gabriel has been the last 2 years. And the whole time, Seth Luttrell, kind of a quieter, unassuming guy that was just standing right off to the side of Jackson. Joe John at one point walks up, and when Jackson's bending down to touch his toes, Joe John's the one lightly pressing on him to make sure he's stretched out while Joe John's talking to him. And then when they broke out to those individual drills, immediately it's Joe John and Seth Luttrell. It's the quarterbacks throwing to kind of the wide receivers doing some routes on air, stuff like that for what we were able to see. And Joe John's out with the wide receivers, but he's also talking back toward Jackson. Seth Luttrell had something to say for Jackson every time he throws, steps back, then it's Bevel and Booty, those guys. You could tell of all the guys that were, hey, you can maybe step out and be on the recruiting trail. We need our new co-OCs, Luttrell and Finley, to be there, to be around, to be present, to put their fingerprints on this thing as quickly as they can. I just thought that was pretty interesting that, Ted Roof was out there, Todd Bates was out there. So it looked like Chavis. Okay, Bates is doing all the defensive line stuff as Chavis goes and recruits. You had DeMarco Murray. The running backs are kind of policing themselves over there. They had personnel over there, but it just seemed really interesting that not just one, but both Joe John and Seth Luttrell were there and highly active around the quarterbacks, which makes all the sense in the world. I wonder if that would have been different if like Dylan was playing in the bowl game. It's like, okay, Dylan, you run this, you can go and sneak out, stuff like that. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, your young quarterback needs a little guidance there at his first couple of practices for the bowl game. Absolutely makes sense. And I'll reiterate something that I said, I think last week about Seth Luttrell. Every practice that was open, every practice session that was open to the media, we could see the quarterbacks out there. Jeff Lebby's, standing back here watching, and he's got his arms crossed. And then right next to him or right behind him every time was Seth Luttrell. And Seth, they'll break up into groups, and Seth will turn and go watch the running backs for a few minutes, and then the quarterbacks get to doing something, and he'll go back and watch the quarterbacks. He's been very, very involved since he's been here with the quarterbacks. Not necessarily coaching them, because that's against the rules. As an analyst, you're not allowed to walk up and say, why don't you look at this guy and see the blitzer coming and pick up the protection here. You can't do that. It's against the rules, especially during open practice when the media is watching. You're not allowed to do that. But he has been watching and talking to the coaching staff since he's been there. So very closely, I should say. This basketball team, Ryan, has been, I'll just say it, they've been surprisingly good. All the new pieces that, for the last 3 years, Porter Moser has said, I've got some new pieces. We're going to work on some chemistry. We're going to build some roles over here. These guys are going to do this, and those guys are going to do that. He's tried and tried and tried. He's been doing the mad scientist thing, pouring the chemicals, and it's blown up in his face the first couple of years. This year, it looks like he's got a pretty smooth operation going with all the new pieces.
He does, and again, I've mentioned a couple of times, but when you sift through it, I think only Rivaldo Soares, Latrey Darthard, and Max. I still can't pronounce his last name, but Max when you see him roll out there. I think they're the ones that cannot return next year. So he's found a Javen McCollum. John Hughley's got years left. I think Godwin's got one more year. Hughley we mentioned, McCollum, Jalen Moore. Obviously, as they bring on Caden Cooper and Jacob Cole, like he'll be able to have it both ways. If he built through the portal, but he also has his program guys, obviously Vitego, Owe, and Milo Suzon. And John, they had a huge week. We talked about the Providence win on the last podcast. They went up to the BOK Center, your neck of the woods in Tulsa, and it was a back and forth first half, but Oklahoma turned on the burners to close the first half on a 14-2 run. Arkansas came out and threw some punches, figuratively trying to get back to the basketball game. OU settled it down. Eric Musselman tried to actually punch the rep. I'm kidding. Eric Musselman just did what Eric Musselman does, which is I'm mad. My team is losing. I'm going to go get two technicals, try to fire them up. But also, I don't have to coach anymore, so that's fun too. The Must Bus was parked in the locker room for the last 10 minutes of that game.
It's a Tulsa tradition.
It is. In 2 or 3 years. Musselman has not finished out the second half in his coach's box over there. And but while all that was going, and I asked Porter what was the key to keep your guys calm, because OU went on a huge run while the T's were flying, and Porter was like, well, I appreciate that, but Soares got a T and Owe got a T, and I was like, yeah, but Owe got one for celebrating, and Soares got one for saying something allegedly to the bench that sparked Eric Musselman just losing his mind, which I think is a net win. But anyway, Oklahoma on the court, play-wise, they kept their head, and that was really a 15 to 20 point type victory. Arkansas never give up. They're pressing to the end. They've got a lot of pride. They cut it down to 9. It was not
they were fighting the walk-ons at the last 2 minutes of the game, so come on.
Yeah. It was not a 9-point victory. They made all that up in the last 2 minutes after Porter emptied the bench, and the result is they're knocking on the top 10. They're 11th in the country. If Gonzaga drops one to UConn on Friday night, Oklahoma and North Carolina might be a top 10 matchup in Charlotte next weekend or next Wednesday. Who had that on their bingo card coming into the year?
Yeah. 9-0 right now. They're playing some really high-level hoops. Everybody's got a role. What's impressive is it looks like everybody's got a role, and everybody is really maximizing what they do in that role, whether it's transition points, whether it's pressure on the edge, on the perimeter, whether it's shooting, three-point shooting. They do it, but they don't overdo it. I've been impressed all the way around. Number 11 in the country. A couple of breaking news items for you. They're Andy Katz's National Team of the Week. There's that.
Boom.
And then new tip time. Tomorrow, Central Arkansas has been moved to 6 p.m. So you
that is not tomorrow. That is the Alamo Bowl. That's the day of the Alamo Bowl.
Oh, the Alamo Bowl. That's 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
They've moved that tip time up to not conflict with the Alamo Bowl. The next outing.
Schedule. Let me get my schedule here.
Yeah, the next outing is actually Saturday night.
That's right.
8 p.m. tip at the Lloyd Noble Center for the mighty Green Bay Phoenix. OU's running graduation stuff that day, so 8 p.m. is the quickest they can get the Lloyd Noble Center turned around, get that thing rolling. So 8 p.m. Saturday against Green Bay. Then they'll head to Charlotte.
Yep.
Then they've got Central Arkansas and Monmouth. I don't remember what order that's in, but they'll play North Carolina and Charlotte, and then they'll close out with Central Arkansas and Monmouth. Central Arkansas obviously happening on December 28th, the day of the Alamo Bowl. That tip time has been moved up. That way the broadcast won't clash as little as possible between OU Central Arkansas hoops and then the Sooners and Arizona back on the gridiron in San Antonio.
Why did I think that was tomorrow?
Hey, a basketball game tomorrow would have been news to me, so that's good that we don't have that.
You got hoops to cover tomorrow.
We should talk to Porter tomorrow. We've been doing Thursday for the Saturday home games, so that tomorrow or Friday, if you head over to All Sooners, there will be more basketball content. If you looked at it too, this was tossed out there. Sam Godwin right now is leading the nation in offensive rebounds per 100 possessions. That's the guy that Eric Musselman just waxed poetic about. Like, Musselman was talking about some of the issues they're having with his team as guys buying into roles. And then he's like, Sam Godwin might be the best role player. He's like, he might be the best role player in the country. That's what Eric Musselman talked about. A guy that knows my job is to board and screen. And if the ball finds me, it finds me. And you could tell that Musselman had a great admiration for how Godwin and Hughley, those guys will just flat out play their butt off for the 4-minute shift. And then they know the other guy's coming in and it's an unselfish group, and you could tell that Musselman really, really admired that from what he could see in the locker room in the second half. Interesting.
Good stuff, man. I appreciate it, Ryan, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll, like we said, plenty of content. Between now and next Wednesday, you've got another hoops game. You've got Randall headed down to the DFW for some high school recruiting. We'll have National Signing Day. The early signing period opens next Wednesday. Everyone have a Merry Christmas. That will be in San Antonio. So just go to AllSooners.com. You never know what's going to pop its way to the front page.
Bowl game is 2 weeks away. Hard to believe.
It's weird to think about. It is weird to think about. It was weirder. I think Randall might have had a little heart attack yesterday. And I was like, hey, man, just remember, signing day is a week away. And he's like, there's no way. And I was like, yeah. Way.
Comes on your face. Comes on you fast. He's going to be in both San Antonio and Orlando for to cover Oklahoma's All-Americans. Oklahoma's got, I think, 8 this year All-Americans. I think they had something like 14 guys last year in that 2023 class were All-American level. And this year, a bunch more. He'll be covering all those as well. So looking forward to that. This segment of the AllSooners Podcast was presented by Infinite Asset Advisors. Go to infiniteassetadvisors.com to learn how you can get debt-free and begin real retirement planning right now. Don't wait to do this, because whether it's retirement, private banking, family asset protection, estate planning, or living trusts, just like Corey and his team take a look at your portfolio, they'll get you on your way to taking control of your financial future. Just call 512-710-0130 or email team@infiniteassetadvisors.com, or just head over to their website, infiniteassetadvisors.com. Coming up next, Randall's jumping in. We're going to hit recruiting, the portal, all that good stuff. That's next on the All Sooners Podcast. Okay, final segment of the All Sooners Podcast. And if you like us, drop us a nice rating, 5 stars. Help us get the word out. Help us grow this thing. We want to be able to grow and get that rating out there, get the podcast out there as much as possible. Share us on social media. Very helpful. Very, very helpful. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, leave a comment. All right, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Randall has joined us, and he is, as I said in the previous segment, a busy, busy man. He's so busy, he's waiting on a call right now, this very second, from one Brendan Zerbrug, quarterback out of Ohio that is committed to Oklahoma and will early enroll for the Sooners. So if his phone goes off, We're going to pause the podcast. He's going to do the interview, and then we'll jump back in and make it work. He was actually expecting a call about an hour ago. So, Brendan, hook us up.
If you're watching this, Brendan, you're on the clock.
That's right. You're on the clock. So you were at practice yesterday with Ryan. I had to sit that one out. It's having a little procedure done. All is well. But you were at practice and you were shooting some video. You shot some practice highlights. Check it out at AllSooners.com. Really good stuff there by Randall. Also shot the videos of the player interviews afterwards. But I wanted to get your observations from practice. What did you see? What stood out to you? A lot of new faces in new places for the Sooners, and some people missing as well. What stood out to you?
Well, the first thing that stood out, and I think that it's something that a lot of media members grabbed onto, was the fact that Tawi Walker was out there working out with the team. I mean, to be in the transfer portal and to be, again, still working towards that bowl prep, it's not something that we haven't seen before. Josh Ellison did the same thing last season before transferring to Memphis, but it was notable to me. And again, with Dalen Smothers in the portal, with Marcus Major in the portal, didn't see those guys out there. So the Sooners will need all that running back depth they can get in this bowl game, especially with obviously some offensive linemen missing. No Cayden Green out there yesterday. It was kind of interesting what his teammates had to say about that. But as far as the coaching changes go, it was really interesting to see Joe John Finley and Seth Luttrell kind of in the middle of the field running things as opposed to Jeff Lebby, right? All the other practices I've seen at camps, at everything, it's been Jeff Lebby there, working with the quarterbacks, working with, when they're doing routes on air, things like that, kind of coaching those guys. And so yesterday it was interesting to see the dynamic between Seth Luttrell and Joe John Finley doing that. Obviously, Luttrell kind of hovering back around the quarterbacks, checking out what those guys are doing, speaking with Jackson Arnold. I saw him pull aside Arnold and Drake Stoops at one time. Those three guys had a good laugh. So check out that video. It's in the highlight reel on allsooners.com. But Joe John Finley, I was, again, obviously I wasn't there hearing what he was saying, but I was impressed by how he looked like he had command of practice. He looked like a natural OC out there. He had his clipboard running through, or whiteboard or play sheet or whatever it was, running through each individual drill, coaching guys up. He was giving high fives out to his tight ends as they would run by, running their routes. I again, wasn't able to hear the actual coaching going on, but just from a confidence and command standpoint, it really looked like Joe John Finley was in control out there. He looked comfortable for a guy who's never been in that role before. Obviously, Luttrell, he's been a head coach. He's been an offensive coordinator. So he looked right at home, in his OU hoodie, walking around, talking to support staff guys, talking to players, quarterbacks, stuff like that. I think that it seemed like everyone got along really well. Jackson Arnold told us after practice that the first few days were kind of weird with the new group, but that now it was starting to get more normal. Things were starting to run smoothly. And from what I saw on the offensive group, it really looked like they were smooth. Defensively, Danny Stutsman was out there working out with his group, the linebackers. He had a big elbow brace on, which we've kind of seen all season. But again, that elbow brace is still there. He was there working out after making that big announcement just a few days ago. Billy Bowman also out there working out. It was cool to see those guys kind of doing a lot of taking a lot of a leadership role with so many coaches, on the road recruiting, stuff like that. Seeing the guys you want to be your veteran leaders if you're OU, Billy Bowman, Danny Stutsman, the guys who will need to be your veteran leaders next season. It was cool to see those guys step up and kind of take command of that role.
Yeah, it is cool to see that transition continue and the growth continue for some of those guys. We're going to see a lot of new players when we go cover the team spring practice, or maybe signing day. We'll talk to the coaches, or maybe Brent Venables will even do what he did last year, which is have a February media day for all the newcomers. That would be impressive.
Yeah.
Randall, he told us at the Alamo Bowl press conference, he was sitting right next to Jed Fish last week in San Antonio. So this wasn't a Zoom. We got to participate via Zoom, but he was there and he was taking questions. Brent was. And he said they're going to sign, or they're going to take, give or take, he said, around 35 to 37 new scholarship players. He said that's not as much as last year. Last year it was 42 in January joined the team. 42 newcomers. Crazy. But he said it's going to be close to that kind of transformation, similar when it comes to the transfer portal. It'll be a little bit less than it was last year. He said they're going to try and take 27 high school players, and he said he thinks 20 of those will be mid-year transfers, so will arrive early enrollees January. We were going over the names and some of the obvious ones, some of the ones who have announced, but there's apparently still a few out there that are kind of lingering that waiting to be approved, waiting to graduate, whatever it is. So, and he also said that they'll have 28 or 29, including the portal guys, mid-year players when they start in January. That's year 3 for Brent Venables next year. That's still a lot of turnover. And I guess, guys, what we're getting at is that this is the new normal for college football. You're going to expect to see a third to a quarter of your roster completely new when the new semester starts, when the bowl game's over and players report back for off-season winter workouts and conditioning and fitness and all that. That's the amount of new players you're going to have, whether you've got a returning coach, a new coach, a coach that's already built his philosophy and culture and established a foundation. Doesn't matter. This is the new college football.
Absolutely. And you have to think that in Oklahoma's case specifically, some of that huge turnover comes from, year number 2 of Brent Venables and his new regime processing some of those guys out. And I think an even bigger aspect of it is the Sooners heading into the SEC next season. I think that Brent Venables and company know that they can't head into one of the toughest college football conferences, if not the toughest college football conference in America, without tons of depth, tons of experience. I think that right now, if you look at the way the team is currently constructed with the guys who have exited via the transfer portal and some of the guys who will, run out of eligibility, declare for the draft, things like that, you'd be heading into the SEC with plenty of players who people around the program who have plenty of promise, but who haven't played a lot of football, and especially not at a high level like SEC competition. I think you want to, if you're OU, you want to avoid having to play a bunch of guys who've never played meaningful snaps in college football before, starting those guys out against the SEC. And I think you want to kind of, I don't want to say give them a crutch, but give them some time to ease into it more by supplementing that with some older players, some veteran guys who have more experience, who have more maturity, who can step in and kind of play those roles early while, a younger player like, we talked about tight end. Devon Mitchell, great prospect. He's probably going to be a phenomenal tight end for OU. Is a 16-year-old, 17-year-old who you want starting in the SEC at day one? Probably not. You get a transfer tight end in. He's able to help the OU offense stay productive while Devon Mitchell learns the game, learns the SEC football more. And then as Devon Mitchell progresses throughout the season, he can kind of step in and take more of those snaps. And I think that that's the way that OU is going to approach a lot of these positions. Not exactly in that method, but a similar mold where you've got a veteran player who can, especially early in the season, take a lot of those snaps while the younger players learn. And I think that we've already seen, you mentioned it before the episode started, OU's differential right now is about -12 in the transfer portal, but some of those guys might be addition by subtraction. So I know people will see the big turnover numbers. People talk about Exodus and Norman, things like that. But I think that a lot of this, like you said, is just the new normal in college football. There's a lot of roster turnover every year. I mean, the transfer portal this year, there's literally thousands of kids in the portal. So I don't think that this is going to slow down anytime soon unless the NCAA decides to step in and do something.
Yeah, and we've seen the NCAA just today. There was a judge in Ohio that issued a temporary restraining order against the rule that blocks multi-year transfers. In other words, multi-year transfers, according to this TRO, they're now immediately eligible. So that's going to be interesting to watch, see how that plays out. They're going to try to make that injunction permanent. Supposed to be late December 27th was the date. So it's just evolving so fast. It's evolving real time. And
when you add NIL in as well.
Who's that?
When you add the NIL factor in as well, it completely turns.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, of course. And what I wanted to transition to was the story you had today, posted literally about 40 minutes ago, on Nate Roberts, the outstanding tight end from Washington, Oklahoma. Just won a second straight state championship. They beat Millwood and Cayden Nickens. Cayden Nickens, of course, is committed to OU. Nate Roberts is not committed anywhere because, Randall, he told you, I'm getting ready to take a bunch of visits.
Yeah. And so this is obviously, if for those who aren't familiar, Nate Roberts is one of the Sooners' priority targets in that 2025 class. He's one of the top tight ends in the country, rated one of the top 3 tight ends in the country by just about every recruiting service. Near a top 100 recruit, in-state guy, obviously. I mean, for those who don't know, Washington is maybe 20 minutes, maybe, from Norman. So really a guy that you'd like to keep home if you're Oklahoma. big 6'4", 235-pound athlete who can move, he can take hits and just keep on churning his feet. Every time I've seen him play in person, I've been impressed. And I know I'm no scout, but everyone else is too. I mean, Penn State, Ohio State, Iowa State, all these people were at a game at Southern Nazarene University between Washington and Jones, Oklahoma, just to see this kid play. If that doesn't tell you how special he is, I don't know what will. But he said he's been to Ohio State, he's been to Penn State, he's been to Norman this fall for game day visits. So I think that of the schools he's considering, those are definitely three that are near the top, if not at the top. And again, we've seen what Penn State's been able to produce out of their tight end room, putting guys in the NFL, even recently with a guy like Pat Fryermuth. Ohio State, obviously, always their offense is always humming. They've put multiple tight ends into the NFL recently as well. And so I think that those are two teams that OU is going to have to beat out. But like you said, Nate Roberts told us after the state championship game, I'm going to take as many visits as I can. I'm not rushing on a commitment. I think that he knows that he'll have his suitors whenever he decides to make that choice. I think he knows that plenty of these teams, he's a priority for plenty of these programs. And I think that OU still, I don't like he said, he's not going to rush to make a commitment. So I don't think that OU, the end of the line is coming for OU. I think that they're still going to have plenty more work to do. They're going to have to continue to build and cultivate that relationship, maintain that connection in order to beat out really good programs like Penn State, like Ohio State, like Alabama, some of the other schools who have offered him from around the country. But as it stands right now, I think OU sits in a great spot because, like he told me later in the interview, I asked Nate, I said, well, now that Joe John Finley's Oklahoma's co-offensive coordinator, he was the tight ends coach before, your position coach being the co-offensive coordinator potentially, does that change your mind at all? And he said, yeah, honestly, it does change my mind a little bit. And to quote him exactly, he said, puts a smile on my face, knowing that Joe John Finley now being the co-OC is going to have a say in potentially throwing the ball to the tight ends more, just getting them utilized in the offense in a better way than maybe they were before. And so it seems like OU, by promoting Joe John to co-offensive coordinator, they really stuck one well with Nate Roberts. It seems like that's really resonating well with him. I think that's going to give OU a big upper hand going forward, in addition to obviously the location factor being just down the road.
Devon Mitchell loves it, and certainly Nate Roberts loves it. These are guys that are extremely – everybody in the country wants these tight ends.
Right.
And Joe John Finley, you mentioned it at the top of this segment, that his involvement in practice, his command of the practice as a coach, as a position coach, but also now co-offensive coordinator. It's got to be exciting if you're a tight end. Yeah,
absolutely. And, I talked to a few tight end recruits, in other tight end recruits in that 2025 class, Chase Lofton to be specific, after Jeff Lebby left. And he said, yeah, he admitted, he said, I had a great relationship with Lebby. I'll have to see how this departure affects my decision because I'll have to see who they bring in now. And I haven't heard back from Chase yet, but I would assume that promoting Joe John Finley probably resonated well with him as well. I think that Seth Luttrell being a former fullback, Joe John Finley being a former professional tight end, former OU tight ends coach, I think that that's going to really resonate well with those H-back tight end guys that OU's going to continue to recruit. And I think that obviously it's resonated well with Devon Mitchell, like you said. So far, Nate Roberts has had a positive outlook on it, and I would imagine that as they continue to recruit some of these tight ends going forward, we'll see that continue. And again, maybe Saturday, whenever I'm down checking out some high school prospects, we'll hear similar sentiment.
Yeah. Now today's December 13th. We said at the top it's Wednesday. Friday, this coming Friday. Not like the basketball goof I made earlier. This coming Friday, there's going to be a big commitment announcement made, and it seems that Oklahoma is trending well in this particular pursuit of an offensive lineman out of Florida.
Yeah, so Eddie Pierre-Louis, a guy that we've talked about, I feel like every week for the past 4 months, kind of been a back and forth recruitment. It's been something that OU, Bill Bedenbaugh has really had to stay diligent on. And again, I know Bill Bedenbaugh is a guy that's catching a lot of heat from OU fans right now, but if he wins this recruitment, that might be a reason to maybe ease off of OU's offensive line coach. Again, Eddie Pierre-Louis rated one of the top 30 players, top 2 interior offensive linemen, depending on what service you subscribe to, but coveted recruit, a guy that people all over the country want. OU's got 4 offensive linemen in that 2024 class. Adding a 5th would be huge, especially with all the departures they've seen on the offensive line. Obviously, there's the shocking Cayden Green departure yesterday. Savion Byrd was a little bit surprising. I mean, Nate Anderson, some of those guys, we've seen a lot of those guys leave. And maybe not all those players were starters. Obviously, Cayden Green was. But the depth pieces, you need those guys. And so, bringing in 5 freshman offensive linemen will be big for the depth, and especially moving forward as, to develop those guys. Eddie Pierre-Louis probably has as much developmental upside as most offensive linemen in the country this year. I think I've sent it to you, the video of him running track. 320-pound men should not be able to 320-pound high school kids should not be able to move like that. So again, a guy that would be a huge get for OU, not only to add depth, but the potential, the talent that's there would be big time. OU's had to battle UCF, which is kind of the hometown team here for Eddie Pierre-Louis. He's a guy who I think staying close to home was important for him, but I do think that in the end, OU, they did an in-home visit with him, I think, last Sunday. So I think that that went very, very well from what I understand. And I think that as long as they can carry the momentum that they have from last weekend into Friday, I think that OU's got a good chance to add 5th offensive line commit in that 2024 class. Also going to have to beat out A&M, UCF, Oregon, Miami. So not a done deal, but definitely I think OU's in a good spot right now.
So we're waiting on a phone call from Brendan Zurbrugg, the quarterback out of Ohio. He's among those 20 or so guys that Brent Venables has said is going to enroll early. Another one that you mentioned earlier that's going to enroll early is Liam Evans, kicker out of Moore. We don't know if he's enrolling early to participate in the bowl game or not. I read today, my man Parker over at OU Insider had something about the 2 guys who are going to participate in the bowl game, and they are Xavier Robinson, the running back, and Michael Hawkins, the quarterback. They're going to show up for practice for the bowl game, get out there, practice against their teammates, and they're apparently going to try to be academically eligible. Now, what this does is, if they play in the bowl game, I don't think, because it's just one game and it's second semester, technically it's not the first semester, I don't think that affects it starts their clock, their NCAA eligibility clock, but it doesn't they can still, it's just one game. They can still redshirt. Right. So, but I find that very interesting that you've got running back situation kind of going. You don't really know. I mean, Tawi Walker's there, but you lost a couple of running backs to the portal, and here comes a freshman running back. Quarterback, you lose Dylan Gabriel to the portal. He goes to Oregon, and Davis Bevel is your backup. Now you've got Michael Hawkins in there early practicing. I mean, this bowl game, this bowl roster is going to look crazy, especially if Liam Evans comes in from Moore and is the place kicker or participates. I don't know I don't know if Evans is going to do this, but if he were to pursue this, he's a heck of a high school kicker. I think he would be in the competition. It just could get interesting, this whole month of December practice and bowl practices and all that.
I know that a lot of fans and stuff like that don't like to see the bowl games with tons of opt-outs, transfers, all the replacements in there. But I have to be honest, for a recruiting guy like me, it's really interesting to see how OU plans to fill these holes. I think it's a good glimpse at the future. And so like you mentioned, in the quarterback room, no Dylan Gabriel. You've only got 2 scholarship quarterbacks for the bowl game in theory. But now if Michael Hawkins is able to come in, that's another good piece that probably won't have to play. But if something does happen and you need a quarterback, you're not throwing in General Booty or Jacob Switzer or a walk-on in there. You're throwing in a guy who has a real future in Norman and a chance to take over the starting role someday down the line. See what he's getting. And again, it gives the coaches another early chance to look and see, all right, here's what we're working with Michael Hawkins. Again, he's fresh off of an incredible, just absolutely incredible run in the Texas high school playoffs. And so I think carrying that momentum into bowl practice is good for him, and I think it's good for the Sooners, obviously. And you mentioned running back, again, Marcus Major, Dalen Smothers, both seemingly out. I mean, obviously no official word, but that's what it seems like. Tawi Walker looks like he's going to play, I would assume, if he's practicing with the team. But again, adding another scholarship running back into that room in case things get thin in the bowl game is going to be huge. And if you're going to bring in one of your freshman running back to potentially play in a game before He's officially a high school student. A college student. Xavier Robinson is the guy to do it with.
Yeah.
6'2", 220 pounds. He's strong. He's physical. He's powerful. That's the guy who's ready to play college football before anyone else in this class, at least in the running back room. And so I think that's the guy that you want in there. Again, he's got the size, the physicality already. So if he does need to get a few carries, it's not going to be like you're sending a guy who's supposed to be a senior in high school out onto the field.
Yeah, good point.
I was just going to mention, sorry, I had something in my throat there, but Liam Evans, the kicker, I think he's rated the number 7 kicker in the country by Cole's Kicking. And so you mentioned it. Very good, very accomplished kicker. I think he's hit some 50-yarders in his high school career, which is very impressive. So we do know he's an early enrollee. His dad said that, but not sure whether he's planning on bowl prep or not. If he does plan on bowl prep, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think that the starting job is necessarily a given, but I think that he'll definitely push for it and compete. I think maybe if we get to the bowl game, if he is practicing, if he is suited up for the game, we see Zach Schmidt miss a kick, maybe that's where Liam Evans gets his shot to shine. We'll see, but I think it's definitely big for the Sooners that he's enrolling early, regardless of whether he plays in the bowl game or not.
Yeah. Still no call from Zerbrug?
Still nothing. I was just checking.
Okay, good. If he calls, just jump in and cut me off. The Sooners got 3 in the portal this past, I guess we're on 7-8 days right now that they've been adding. We talked about 15 out. There's 3 in. Spencer Brown, offensive lineman, Des Malone, defensive back, cornerback, and Deion Burks, wide receiver. What are your thoughts on those 3 guys? You talked to, or you interacted with Des Malone. Let's start there.
Yeah, so Des Malone is a guy that I think his attitude is something that probably Brent Venables and those guys like. Again, very seems like he's got a good confidence, but not cocky. Where what really comes to mind is I asked him about playing in the SEC, and he said, "Yeah, I'm excited. It's the best players in college football. It's the best competition, and I feel like I can hang with those guys. I feel like I can play with that top competition, but it's you always want to play against the best." And so things like that, when you hear that, you think, all right, that's a Brent Venables guy. That's a guy that this regime, the personality style, that's someone that they would like. And again, then you look at the size, you look at the production, you say, well, okay, it all checks out. 6'2", 200 pounds, that's a good size for a cornerback, especially heading into the SEC. He's a guy who's spent 4 years in college already, so he's older, he's matured. Kind of what we were talking about earlier. You don't want the young guys who don't have a lot of experience taking the majority of the snaps when you first get into the SEC. Des Malone is a guy who can come in, who's played plenty of snaps. He's played against Arizona, which the OU's bowl opponent, and he can. I don't want to say it'll be a seamless transition. I'm sure that going from the Mountain West to the SEC is going to be a little different, but a guy who at least has played college football, who's got the size, who's got the experience. Again, 2-time All-Mountain West honorable mention, so there's been some production there. I think in the past 2 years alone, he's recorded 3 or 4 interceptions. So again, solid production, and just a guy that, if nothing else, slides in as a good depth piece at cornerback. Where, I mean, you look at OU this season: Gentry Williams, Kenai Walker, and Woody Washington were the 3 main guys. When when Gentry was dealing with injuries, which felt like nearly every game, it was the Kenai Walker and the Woody Washington show. And behind them, it was a bunch of freshmen: Jacoby Johnson, Josiah Wagner, Makari Vickers. And again, those guys probably have really promising careers at Oklahoma. But 3 redshirt freshmen are probably not guys that you want leading your defensive back group in the SEC. I mean, when you're playing against LSU on the road, or when Alabama comes to Norman, you don't want a bunch of true freshmen or redshirt freshman corners who have very little experience dealing with some of the best wide receivers, some of the best quarterbacks, playmakers in the country. And so I think getting a veteran guy who's seen some of that before, I think that'll really, really help OU as they head into the SEC next year. Again, I would imagine that he will challenge to start, and even if he doesn't, he'll probably get plenty of snaps as a good rotational player. And I don't think that OU's done offering defensive backs either. I mean, Jermod McCoy, who's a Oregon State transfer, I think he had 2 or 3 interceptions himself this year. He just picked up an offer from the Sooners yesterday. So I think that OU is still going after some of these guys, some of these defensive backs in the portal. They're not done. Woody Washington obviously can stay if he wants. He's got another year of eligibility, might be departing to the draft. And if he does depart to the NFL draft, then or just move on from his OU career, then I think it's even more crucial that OU lands some of those transfer defensive backs, because you really, really don't want to go to the SEC with the only defensive back on your roster with good starting experience being Gentry Williams, a guy who was hurt most of the year.
Yeah. In terms of wide receiver, my guess, and this is just a guess, is that they're not going to offer, they're not going to really heavily pursue any more portal wide receivers. They got the prize they wanted in Deion Burks. They've got so many freshmen coming in the 24 class and the 25 class next year that you don't want to overcook this thing by getting a bunch of portal guys in to complicate things. Plus, you look at who they've got back. I think they're set at wide receiver. Spencer Brown, on the other hand, he jumps in and he's like, yeah, I could play left tackle. I could play right tackle, whatever you coaches think, whatever you want me to do. He played right tackle at Michigan State. He's like the tip of the spear on the offensive line. What's needed across the offensive line? You got Cayden Green suddenly bailing out unexpectedly in a massive hole that you were building around for the next 3 years. He's gone. You're replacing two guys who went to the NFL draft. They need immediate replacing. There's movement on both tackles. There's depth. There's youth. There's inexperience. There's backups. Spencer Brown is like all of a sudden, hey, Spencer, you know any other offensive linemen that might want to come to OU? They're asking him stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, so if you think about it, I mean, obviously Jacob Sexton started at the end of the year for the Sooners, so he seems like he'll be back. Of course, that would be shocking if he's not back. But also, again, seems like he'll be back. Aside from him, OU doesn't have any starting offensive linemen coming back. Andrew Raym, gone to the draft. Caden Matoyer, out of eligibility. Cayden Green, in the transfer portal. Tyler Guyton, gone to the draft. Walter Rouse, out of eligibility. I mean, those are 5 guys who literally started for multiple games for OU this season. Yep. In addition to those guys, we mentioned Savion Byrd. He started multiple games for OU this season. He's out the door. Nate Anderson might not have been a starter, but again, a depth player. He's out the door. Caleb Schaefer, out of eligibility. I think I don't know that he started for OU this year, but he did come in. He did get some action in, most notably in that UT game. But again, he was one of the Sooners' key depth pieces on that offensive line this season. And he's another guy that's out of eligibility too. So you mentioned it. Not only are you replacing starters, but you're trying to find depth behind the new starters that you're bringing in. And so Spencer Brown is obviously a huge welcome addition because he seemingly will fill one of those tackle spots. Jacob Sexton will probably get the other. So it seems like most likely, again, nothing's given, but most likely you've got your 2 starting tackles. And I would assume that Spencer Brown, being 6'6", 315 pounds, that's kind of the Bill Bedenbaugh mold of a tackle, big, just massive maulers. I assume that with his experience being I think redshirt senior or a true senior, regardless, a veteran player, I think that will again slot him into a lot of playing time, just because OU doesn't want to throw a guy who's never started a game at the college level against SEC defensive linemen. I mean, we know how ferocious those guys are. I talked about the receivers in the SEC. The defensive linemen are probably even better. And so you don't want guys who've never gotten a ton of experience, ton of playing time out there going up play after play against those guys. I think Spencer Brown, obviously being a multi-year starter, will get the slide right in there. But you mentioned it. OU's going to need to hit the portal and get some other offensive linemen to fill those interior spots. Josh Bates maybe slides in and is your new center next year. But maybe that's a spot that you're looking for a more veteran player. The guard spots, OU desperately needs to fill their guard spots now that Cayden Green is gone. We mentioned Caleb Schaefer, no Savion Byrd, Nate Anderson out of the way. I mean, that's 4 guards right there that are. I mean, that's not to mention McCade Matoyer, who's out of eligibility as well. I mean, that's 5 guards that you're losing right there. That's where you really need to fill those holes. OU's got some offers out to some offensive linemen, notably another Michigan State offensive lineman, Gino Vandemark, interior guy. And so again, OU's trying. They're pulling hard in the portal for those interior guys, but Spencer Brown was a guy that they really, really needed, especially with what's going on the offensive line. And I would imagine that we'll hear some more news regarding some offensive line transfers pretty soon.
Yeah, that's what I was just getting ready to say, was they probably have offered 6 guys while we've been sitting here talking about it, and 2 of them may have already committed. I mean, this thing moves so fast. So let's switch to running back, where in talking about the transfer portal, one SEC running back has put Oklahoma in his top 4, and it looks like they might go in a different direction. I find that interesting.
Yeah, so Mario Anderson is the running back that you're referring to. He originally, I think, was at Newberry College, which is in South Carolina, Division II school. I think spent 4 years there, then transferred to South Carolina, and this year ran for a little over 700 yards. I think 4 or 5 touchdowns. So productive season. He's about 5'9", 210, 215 pounds. So it's really interesting if you look at kind of his backstory, his size, his production. What does that seem really similar to? Tolly Walker, right?
Yeah.
5'9", 215, guy who came from the lower level and transferred up, and again, similar production. So a guy that OU, I think, obviously would love to have. I don't think that they would turn their nose up at him. His other top 4 schools were Memphis, USC, and Cal. So some other schools that were interested in him, obviously USC and Memphis, they put out some pretty successful offenses most years. But it seems like OU is leaning more towards taking Sam Franklin, a running back from UT Martin. He put up almost 1,400 yards this year. I think he had 11 touchdowns on the ground. He averaged over 6 yards a carry this year. So guy who has a ton of production at the FCS level this year. If you go back to last year as a sophomore, he had over 600 yards and 8 touchdowns, averaging like 8 yards a carry. So this is a guy who, in his last 2 seasons at the FCS level, has been extremely productive. He's picked up some good offers since he put his name in the portal. But it seems like OU's trending in the right direction with him. I think that might be somewhere where they're able to get a running back commitment out of the portal. Again, we'll have to see. Nothing's set in stone. But right now, the way things look, it seems like they're trending in the right direction towards OU and Samuel Franklin, which, again, it would be a big get for a team that seems to be losing a lot of running backs next season. Outside of Sawchuk, they'll probably be relying on a transfer if they can bring one in. And then maybe if Javonte Barnes, if Taylor Tatum, maybe Xavier Robinson is able to work their way into the rotation.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised if some of those young guys find themselves getting heavy carries next year. Let's go quickly through these. There's a couple of preferred walk-ons who are legacy players who just got their offers, their preferred walk-on offers. This could be interesting, including one who's got a brother on the team.
Yeah, so we'll start there, I guess. Xavier Freeman, if you can't catch on to the last name, that is the younger brother of Gavin Freeman and the son of Jason Freeman. I think that kind of probably being redundant for most OU fans. I think they know both of those guys. But just like his brother, he plays for Heritage Hall. I'd say Xavier's a little closer to his dad than his brother. His dad obviously being a tight end. Xavier's a 6'1", 250-pound offensive and defensive lineman. So not the biggest guy in the world, but I've seen him play personally. He is physical. He plays hard. He's exactly the type of guy that you would expect OU to go after with a preferred walk-on. Those guys who are going to bring it in practice every day, who are going to try to make their teammates better, who hustle. And again, he is physical. He is strong. I mean, he's a big, stout kid. I think that I can't say enough how hardworking, how much he hustles, and just on those offensive and defensive lines, you can see him moving guys out the way. You can see him getting into the backfield, dragging guys down. He was a guy that when you go to watch Heritage Hall, you always notice that that's definitely one of the best players on the team. Of course, Andy Bass sticks out just doing the crazy stuff that he does statistically. But I think outside of Andy Bass, when you look around the field, you say that's one of the best players on the team. I think that OU's done well, obviously, with Freeman's in the past. And so I think that it's really cool for them to extend this offer. Now, he obviously hasn't committed or anything yet, but I would assume that things will probably go in the way that OU wants on that one, considering that I haven't seen a ton of other Division I schools really making a move on Freeman. But again, I think that this is a guy who, I've said it before with Dax Knowles, the Norman High School preferred walk-on commit, a guy who's going to make his teammates better in practice because he's going to bring it, he's going to work hard, and he's got some good tools that, I don't want to say that it will lend themselves to him being a huge playmaker on the field necessarily for OU, but at least will make his teammates have to work to beat him in practice. And moving on, go up north to more your neck of the woods, not quite, but closer, Bixby. Evan McClure, who's an offensive lineman for the Spartans, picked up a preferred walk-on offer. Again, I think if you're from the state of Oklahoma, you know how dominant Bixby is. I don't need to go into that. But Evan's dad, Drew, actually played for OU in the mid to late. Bruce.
Bruce.
Sorry, I I had a teacher in elementary school named Miss McClure. I think her husband's name was Drew. That's why I'm getting it. If Miss McClure is watching this, thank you for teaching me math. Anyway, Bruce McClure, the father of Evan McClure, played for OU from the mid to late 90s. He was an offensive lineman himself. And Evan is actually a really solid player. I think he's got a handful of D1 offers, including Tulsa, some of those schools up in that level of play. And so if OU is able to land a PWO commitment from a guy who's got other Division I offers, we've seen them do it in this class with guys like Bergen Kaiser, with Jacob Jordan, some other guys. But if they're able to pull the same thing off with Evan McClure, I think that would be a huge get, because this is a guy who has had a ton of success at the high school level. He's a big kid. His dad played for OU, and I think that he's got all the makings of the PWO guys that Brent Venables and company that OU wants to bring onto their team. I think that those are two good PWO offers extended, and I think that OU would be happy to land both of them.
All right, we'll finish with this, Randall. You're going to be busy, as I've said before, over the next few weeks, of course. But starting tomorrow, you've got high school games at AT&T Stadium, Texas High School State Championship games. You're going to cover one on Thursday, and you're going to cover 3 on Saturday. From those 4 games that you're going to watch, give me one name, give me one guy that you think Oklahoma fans really need to turn their attention to.
Ooh, that's a good question. All right. I would say Thursday night, Colin Peacock, a name that OU offered him over the summer. This is a guy who's been crystal balled to OU before, so it would not be I think that there's been predictions for him to end up in Norman before. This is a guy who in the past has worked with our friend Sean Cooper down at C4 in Durant, Oklahoma. So he's got some ties to the area. And he also played 7-on-7 with Jacob Jordan, who is an OU 2024 preferred walk-on commitment. They're both from the DFW area, and so they know each other well. I think that there's some good connections between OU and Peacock and some of his friend network and things like that. Good athlete. He runs, I think, like a 10.5 in the 100 in track. So that's really fast. He's about 6'1", 180 pounds. Not the highest rated prospect, but a guy that I think that he's the type of player that Brent Venables and company love to go after. We'll get his thoughts where he's sitting with OU on Thursday night. So be sure to tune in for his highlights, for, again, what he thinks about OU right now. And then I know you said one, but quickly, on Saturday night, DeSoto, 2027, I know, crazy. 2027 wide receiver Ethan Feaster, one of the top 2027 players in all of America. I was telling you before, he had like 20 offers before he even started high school. Receiver for DeSoto. He was OU's first offer in the 2027 class. First offer in the 2027 class. We'll get to talk to him on Saturday night, see what he thinks, see where OU is. Again, going to be one of the top players in the entire country. Probably will be a 5-star in that class. So OU got in on that one early.
Colin Peacock, a 2025 defensive back, someone to keep an eye on for sure. Heck of a player. If you've nothing yet from Brendan Zerbrug.
Nothing yet.
Okay, nothing yet. We'll give him a ring when you get off the podcast here. If you've hung on with us this long, I'm going to reward you guys with a little bit of math and a little bit of numbers and a little bit of names as we wrap up the podcast. Y'all remember the Sooner Summit, right? 2021, AllSooners. This was June, July. I can't remember exactly. I think July of 21 recruiting class. But it was 2020. So these guys were still in high school. Y'all remember the Sooner Summit? Caleb Williams organized everything, got everybody to fly to, including to Oklahoma City, to hang out in Norman for unofficial visits, because this was during the pandemic. Everybody had to wear masks. I was there with my big fancy camera and I was shooting video. And we got all those videos uploaded, interviews, Caleb and all his buddies. Among the guys that we interviewed was Danny Stutsman. And I got to thinking about some of the numbers, and I was talking with Danny Stutzman's dad earlier in the week, and we got to talking about some of the names and numbers of the what's the total number? I'm looking at the class here. Total number of commits. I don't even have the total number here. I thought I did. 25. 25 total guys. Guess how many are still at OU? Out of 25, you got 6 guys left.
Yeah,
And
more than
when
I thought.
Danny Stutsman came back, he was one of the 6. Here's your list. Caleb Williams, gone. Clayton Smith, gone. Mario Williams, gone. Savion Byrd, gone. Kelvin Gilliam, gone. Cody Jackson, gone. Nathan Rollins Kabanje, gone. I thought he was going to be good. Latrell McCutcheon, gone. Damon Harmon, gone. Jordan Mukes, gone. Cullen Montgomery, gone. Wanya Morris finished his career after transferring from Tennessee. Is in the NFL now. Key Lawrence, don't know if he's in the portal, but I don't know if he's going to be playing. I didn't hear anything about seeing him at practice on Tuesday. Eric Gray in the NFL right now, another transfer from Tennessee. Micah Bowens, gone. Mike Woods from Arkansas in the NFL. Maurice Wren, gone.
Oh, wow.
Who else we got? Oh, Michael Turk just got another NFL tryout this week. Robert Conjal, transfer from Arizona, gone. His eligibility expired. The only guys on this list, out of 25 guys, the only ones left. You ready for this? Billy Bowman. Got the list right here. Hang on. Jalil Farouk, Ethan Downs, Danny Stutsman, and then 2 transfers. Josh Plaster and Isaiah Coe. How's that for a list? 25 guys. You only got 6 left. 4 of those are high school guys. So 4 out of that freshman class are back, are still here 3 years later. Crazy.
And you mentioned the transfers, Plaster and Coe. Coe obviously was a very impactful player in his time at OU, but his time is up now, graduating now. And Plaster hasn't really done much. I mean, he was the punter to begin this year and then got his job taken.
Holder. He's done some holding. Yeah.
Yes, he has done some holding.
Yep, which I would take that if I were on a college football roster, if I were the holder. I would love
he can become OU's second Mortel Holder of the Year award winner. Following the footsteps of Connor McGinnis.
Spencer Brown won it too, didn't he?
Oh,
Spencer Jones. Sorry, Spencer Brown is the offensive lineman from Michigan State. Spencer Jones.
I did not realize Spencer Jones won it.
Yeah, the Hottie of the Year, HOTY, Holder
of the Year. Yeah.
Good stuff, man. As always, appreciate you, Randall.
Thanks, Hoove.
And thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week on the AllSooners Podcast. Certified fresh from the press box is what we used to do after games. That's coming up. We got 2 more weeks, guys. 2 more weeks. We're going to have a game, and we're going to have a post-game podcast that will be certified fresh. But you can find those and all of our shows on Apple, Google, Spotify, Podbean, iHeart, anywhere you find your podcasts. You'll find the AllSooners Podcast. If you have an Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners Podcast. It's also posted on our website, hopefully soon, allsooners.com. Just click the player and listen on your phone, your tablet, or your computer, and all shows are posted on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. For Ryan Chapman, for Randall Sweet, great job, guys. I'm John Hoover. See you guys.